Welcome, everybody, to the Stoned On Sports podcast. My name is Matt. Really happy to be here with you. As always, I'm joined by the Brood, Kyle, and Ramey. Before I pass it over to those fellas, I want to take a moment, just express a little bit of gratitude for all of our subscribers and our listeners and our sponsor, Rocky's Pizza. Damn good pizza, made in a stone oven. It's not that conveyor belt bullshit.
Our Central Illinois correspondent, Justin, will be joining us for our wide receiver preview today. I'm looking forward to that, and should be a really good conversation about the top 40 or so wide receivers that we've got coming between the ones we have listed and our sleepers. So should be a good time.
Looking forward to it.
Absolutely. Justin gets just all right.
I know. What are the odds?
Yeah.
I was telling Matt last night, I texted him, I was like, that should be a really ezy one. It's just Justin Jefferson. Draft him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Take him first, win your league. Be happy you did it. I'm really expecting huge things out of him this year. I think everybody is. I really think he's gonna tickle 2K. I don't think he's gonna get to the 2,000. I think he probably has a chance though. 130 receptions, not out of the question. 12 to 15 TDs. I do expect more touchdowns this year, but take him first. It's a no-brainer for Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, you get the first pick, and maybe you like Chase better, but I would go with Justin Jefferson as well.
I think the edge for me is Justin Jefferson hasn't missed a game, whereas Chase, it seems like he misses a game or two every year. Give me that consistency of being on the field, especially at the number 1 overall pick.
He just does so much. He can do everything. I mean, he can catch the short ball and break it for a long run, but he can also throw it to him deep too. Like he's just so good. Like it's ridiculous.
99 overall in Madden doesn't lie.
Yeah.
No, and I want to see who just cranks out great wide receivers.
I mean, that could be a whole podcast episode in itself. That team with Burrow, Chase, and Jefferson. I mean, not that they could win more games because they didn't lose any games, but Jesus, I mean, just unbelievable talent.
Speaking about Jamar Chase, he's going to be the number 2 guy off the board in the rankings here. He played only 12 games last year due to injury. He still had 134 targets, 87 receptions, and over 1,000 yards and 9 touchdowns. Crazy. It's just crazy. But in his career so far, he averaged 19.1 fantasy points per game in PPR format. That's 20 points a game or 20 a week. That's great to count on for a floor. I love it. Either JJ or Chase are a great pick. That's all I got to say. I mean, really, 140. I think he'll catch 100 balls, probably, let's say 1,350 for yards and double-digit touchdowns if he's healthy.
I think that's reasonable for sure. I mean, he's Joe Burrow's favorite target. Yeah, that's something you want to be a part of.
Well, when he gets on a roll with his favorite target, it's really hard to stop.
It is. And I think at first last year, they were having some trouble adjusting to the 2 deep safety. But Zach Taylor made the necessary adjustments and Chase had, essentially the season that you look for from a player of that caliber.
They're so balanced too. I mean, not only they run the ball really well with Mixon and others, but they have which we'll talk about later, T. Higgins on the other side. So you can't just they try to, but you just can't consistently double team Chase all the time. He's going to find his spots, and Burrow's going to find him when he's open.
Yeah, and the best wide receiver 3 in the league, Tyler Boyd. Like, they're just stacked.
Hey.
So
you get punished wherever you put your energy there.
At number 3 on the list is Tyreek Hill. Last season, he had 115 grabs, 1,633 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He's come out this year saying he wants to get 2,000 yards. I think if Tua stays healthy, like Justin Jefferson, he's got a chance to approach that. The really nice thing about that offense is, there are 2 players that are going to be getting the targets, and that's Tyreek Hill and Jaylen Waddle. I did see he was a surprisingly good blocker, which makes a lot of sense when you look at Jaylen Waddle's yards after contact. So he's really contributing all over the field. He gets an elite target share. I think he's good for at least 1,700 yards, and I'll stay the same at 7 touchdowns this year if he stays on the field. He's as close as there is to uncoverable in this league with his speed.
Tua is so damn accurate. Like you said, if Tua stays healthy, he's going to find Hill, and he's going to use that elite speed to get down the field and just basically run past other people. And that's how he gets a lot of his yards. The thing that surprises me with him, with as many deep balls as he catches, that he doesn't score more touchdowns. You think that he would be up in the 10, 11 touchdowns, and maybe he will be this year, but I get where you're saying 7 touchdowns. It's probably a good figure to go off of when you're looking at drafting him.
Well, sure. And when you're in the red zone, go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, you think he'd break more of them for touchdowns. You're right. That's one of the things that stood out to me as well.
Yeah. And he's not exactly the, I guess, body prototype where you look for red zone targets to come from either.
On to number 4, Cooper Kupp from the Los Angeles Rams. Last year, he had an injury shortened season. He only played 9 games. He still put up 75 catches off of 98 targets for 812 yards and 6 touchdowns. So if you kind of extrapolate that out to a full season, you're looking at close to what he put up in 2021. Not quite that good. He had 16 touchdowns and almost 2,000 yards in 2021, which is nuts. I think he's going to be somewhere between those two years. I don't think he's going to touch what he did in 2021, but I think he's going to be a little bit healthier this year. I see him going for 100 grabs, 105 maybe, 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns. Part of the reason for that is because there's not a lot of other options on this team. Van Jefferson is your number 2 receiver. And Matt Stafford, as long as he stays healthy, has shown that he loves to throw to Cooper Kupp. So there's going to be plenty of opportunities there.
And will the Rams even see much field, time of possession? Because their defense is young and sucky right now.
Young and
hard to
sucky.
get rid of them. Yeah,
young and sucky. There's not a lot of
like,
recognizable names. I've been drinking for 72 hours straight at a tubing party this weekend. I am kind of foggy still. I got raccoon eyes. Yeah, good time.
Young and sucky. I think I saw that movie on that shelf behind you there, Kyle.
Yeah.
If you were to tell me that Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford are going to stay healthy all season long, I think Cooper Kupp is my wide receiver 1. Over his last 25 games, he's averaging 25 fantasy points a game. To give you kind of a reference comparison, last season, Justin Jefferson averaged about 22.
I got 2 words for you with Cooper Kupp: garbage time. I think that young and sucky defense is going to create a lot of come from behind games where they're probably still going to lose, but I think he'll get a lot of stats in garbage time. He may even sit out some fourth quarters if they're getting dusted hard enough and they don't want to get him injured. But I actually think he'll pick up a pretty heavy season for stats. But in terms of winning, I think the Rams are going to be trash this season.
I think if they were both on the board, I would lean to the guy coming up next.
And on that note, Stefon Diggs. I was really curious, and I kind of want to hear you guys' opinion on this before I give you my full take, because I have a point to make here. Do you think the chemistry issues will come back to bite them in the butt?
I don't think they will this year. I think it depends on if they're winning or not. If they win like they did last year, I mean, that's easy to say, right? Yeah. If they continue to win, I think that will be a storyline, but I think it'll take a bit of a backseat. But if they hit like a 2 or 3 game skid, I could see those rearing their head and it's starting to become a problem between Josh Allen and Stefon.
Love me a diva receiver.
I actually wrote that word. I love that. I think the chemistry is really going to be an issue, and I think there's a potential if they start slow, he demands a trade. He's shown that he's a little moody. He's very mercurial. It reminds me of Odell Beckham Jr. earlier in his career, where he might fight the net on the side. He might fight somebody on the other team. He's so talented and so good. Even really reminds me to go back a little bit for like a Steve Smith from the Panthers, not the Giants. Feisty, small, but really goes after it. And one of the best guys when a play breaks down. I think he'll have 100 receptions wherever he's at. He does that every year. I think he'll probably get double-digit touchdowns. But I think there's a decent chance that, this season could go left for the Bills early with all the expectations and all the pressure carrying over from last season. And I think there's a world where he demands a trade early on.
I could see that happening. I think diva is a fitting word for him. just based on the way he's behaved. As you know, we've kind of made that point, but there's no denying the talent as well. And they've done a lot of good things there together in Buffalo. And even when he was in Minnesota, it was obvious he was going to be an upper echelon receiver.
Next up, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions. I love him. Super high on him. It's a homer pick a little bit, but he's just amazing. Caught 106 balls last year, over 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns. The thing that's big for me is him and Goff's rapport it's just fantastic. He's Goff's go-to receiver. Out of those, 106 passes, 68 of those were for first downs. It's crazy. Like, they're just, the chemistry for them is good. He's a huge PPR value. I got him at 120 targets. Now let me up to 130 targets and 105 receptions.
We got to change on the fly here, folks.
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
well, 12 things changed when I wrote this a week ago. 1,200 yards and 8 touchdowns. So I like him personally better than Diggs or Davante Adams or CeeDee Lamb.
I'm not going to lie. When I gave that intro to Stefon Diggs, it was intended for ARSB, but I couldn't see the list properly. Anyways, I think in a PPR, you have, I think you can make a solid case for him to be the third receiver off the board. I think I would still take Justin Jefferson over him. I think he's closer to Chase than a lot of people might think, but just given how he's going to be peppered with targets like that, especially, you know, in the short and intermediate game, those are high probability of being caught. Put him there at 3. I'll listen to an argument at 2.
Yeah, he's and with Jameson suspended and Chark left, and he's seeing reps on the outside of training camp. So he's not going to be just working from the slot with those targets. He's going to see a lot of volume.
And what a cool name. Let's just call it like it is. What a cool name.
Yeah.
Like, the guy sounds like a character in Mortal Kombat. So it's awesome. Every time he catches something, I really think the strength that he has is going to get a lot of those completions over the middle, Matt. Like you were saying, his hands are very strong, catches the ball easy into his hands, takes it into the body. I really think it's going to be a good season for him and the Detroit Lions. I know last time I was here, I predicted they'd win the division, but I don't know. I'm thinking maybe a little different now, but big season for him this year.
How's that Chicago Kool-Aid tasting?
Oh, so good this time of year. In November, sometimes it bitters. It gets a little sour, frozen maybe, but it's fine. We'll turn it into margaritas.
There you go. I think the brand name for Kool-Aid up in Chicago is Old Style, if I remember right.
Isn't that the Chicago flag, the Old Style banner? No.
Number 7 on the list, CeeDee Lamb. He's a young question, number 1 there in Dallas. You've got Mike McCarthy coming in. He's going to be calling plays this year. I think they're going to throw the ball more, but the offensive tempo won't be what it was last season. Last year, he had a great year, over 100 catches, over 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns. He really did a lot of work towards the back half of the season. 3 of his 400-yard games were in the last half dozen weeks of the season. And he's really got, for the first time since Amari Cooper left, a legit receiver opposite him with Brandon Cooks showing up there. I think he's going to get peppered with targets this year. I'm thinking somewhere around 160. I think his numbers will be right around what they were last year. We'll call it 110 for 1,400 and 8 touchdowns.
And Mike McCarthy's calling the plays there, right? This year, it's what he announced.
Yep.
So that'll be interesting to see how he's going to be different.
It will be interesting to see.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, that offense is going to be potent, and CD is going to be a big focal point of that. It's just a matter of, I know that Dak is primed to have hopefully a career year. I mean, I say hopefully, but I really don't care. But CD is going to be a big, because I don't like the Cowboys. I'm like Kyle. But this offense does excite me, and I think that they're going to really have a balanced attack. And I know that Dak's going to rely on CD both deep and in the short and intermediate. Just a guy that can do a little bit of everything, and I think he's primed for a career year. So I wouldn't hesitate to take him off the board, even over a guy like Cooper, Kupp, just because of the health issues. CD doesn't seem to get hurt as often. is just a little bit more consistent, especially with where those two teams are, to use those two players as a comparison.
They do a really good job of moving him around the field too. He's about a 50-50 split between being in the slot and being out wide.
I think he'll have a breakout year, but like it does every year in Dallas, it's going to depend on Dak's health. If Dak can stay healthy, I really think they're going to have a good season, go probably even into the potentially NFC Championship, and then hopefully a crushing loss to extend that Cowboy streak of no Super Bowl victories.
Number 8, A.J. Brown, Philadelphia Eagles. Last year, he had a really nice year coming over from Tennessee. Proved to be one of Jalen Hurts's, not one of his favorite targets. He played all 17 games. He had 88 catches. What shocked me was that he was targeted 145 times. He was just shy of 1,500 yards and had 11 touchdowns, which was second among wide receivers. I think he's going to repeat. I think he's going to have really similar numbers to that. Maybe not quite as good, but I think the relationship between him and Hurts is going to prime him for close to 100, if not 100 receptions, around 1,400 yards and another 10 touchdowns. The couple of things that I noticed when I was doing the research for this one is that he was split out wide 74% of the time, and he averaged 2.47 yards per route run, which was only second behind Justin Jefferson.
I have a hard time seeing any growth there. Last season, he was 11th in snaps. DeVonta Smith was actually number 1 in that category. The team was second in the NFL in scoring. They scored like 477 points. I don't see where there's any growth. And so with him right around the first, second round turn, you're drafting him at his ceiling, I think. And with anyone, I have a hard time projecting somebody to play all 17 games again, let alone that number of snaps that he saw.
Well, it's a very physical brand of football too. You know, it's like a lot of things went right last year. There's not much that would have to go wrong this year for him to come down a little, Matt. I think you're right with A.J. Brown. He's so consistent when he's on the field, but there's a decent chance he misses a couple games this year. It's just law of averages.
For sure. And I think somebody like Garrett Wilson actually has a higher ceiling than him this season.
Well, fuck you guys.
That's fair.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah.
Number
Yes,
9, Davante Adams and the Las Vegas Raiders. Aiden O'Connell, I really think by the end of this season is going to be the starting quarterback there. Jimmy Garoppolo's shown he can't be healthy. And I know I'm throwing a lot of like 2 ways at you guys, where this could go one of 2 ways, but I feel like this is another one of those. If he doesn't get traded to the Jets, I'm predicting a big year for him at the Raiders. I think Aiden O'Connell is going to find him as a favorite target early and often. I think he could have a resurgent year, reminiscent of when he played with a younger Aaron Rodgers, not young, but younger. I think he really could go in the 16, 17 touchdown range, 1,500 yards, 120 receptions, because I don't see him throwing the ball to a whole lot of other people if he gets under pressure as a young quarterback. But I do really think he scrambles. Davante Adams, he knows with Aaron Rodgers, get to the sidelines, get ready, get open. I think he'll have a lot of bailout catches. That is if the Raiders don't suck and trade him to the Jets.
Yeah, he had a massive 32% target share last season, helping drive those numbers. And this was something, as I was, kind of poking around, researching to get ready for this. This season, he's got a legitimate shot to go over 10,000 yards and score his 100th touchdown. Those are Hall of Fame numbers.
Elite.
Yeah, and I never really stopped to think about him as a future Hall of Famer. I mean, whatever quarterback is there taking snaps, he's going to make them look good. Just get the ball into vicinity.
The Karl Malone of receivers, just consistent.
So
I mean, we watched him in the NFC, against the Lions for a guy who's always just open, breaking, so good.
Yeah,
So
and he's
good.
somebody that struggled with drops earlier in his career too. He had a hell of a time getting Rodgers' trust over his first couple seasons.
Yeah, I think us NFC North people have some PTSD from him.
I'm
Oh, yeah.
going to use your guys' AJ Brown argument against you. He played all 17 games last year. He's 30 years old, and he had 1,500 yards. I think that's the ceiling for him. When you say he had, I understand why you said what you said, but to say he has a resurgent year this year after putting up 1,500 yards and 14 touchdowns is a testament to how good he is and how good he has been. But again, the law of averages, he's only played 17 games. I guess they've only played 17 games for a couple of years, but he usually is good for missing 2 or 3 games. And the quarterback talent there, even if Aiden O'Connell ends up being the starter, it's not as good as it was with Derek Carr. And Derek Carr and him had that relationship going all the way back to college. So while I think he would be a fine wide receiver 1, I don't think that's the issue. I just think his numbers from last year are probably his ceiling for this year.
Definitely a fair point. But
Yeah.
Fuck you. No.
I love it. What do we got? Number 10? Yes.
Correct.
Gotta get with it. Number 10, Garrett Wilson for the New York Jets. 147 targets last year, 83 receptions for over 1,100 yards, and only 4 touchdowns. The caliber of those targets were pretty shitty with Zach Wilson. And, Mike White was all right, I guess, for a game or 2. But I think the targets should improve with a healthy Rodgers at the controls. They could be one of the league's top connections this year if they're both healthy and can have good rapport. I think he'll have noticeably more yardage and an uptick in touchdowns this year. I'll go 120 targets, 90 receptions, 1,300 yards, 8 or 9 touchdowns.
I think that's conservative.
No, nobody jump at, and I looked and looked and looked, and that's what I boiled it down to. So
I think he's got the potential to get around 160 targets this year. The last time Nathaniel Hackett and Aaron Rodgers were together, Davante Adams got peppered. He ended up with like 1,500 yards that year. I think they did bring in Alan Lazard, Corey Davis is there, but they don't really pose any threat to the targets that would be going to Wilson. I think they're going to give him just as much as he can handle.
Yeah. Do you think that'll take 6-7 weeks for them to really connect? Were the games those first 6 weeks are not that great, or is it just going to go right out the gate?
I mean, there's a timing aspect involved to it for sure, but that's what the preseason, that's what offseason reps are for. That's why you spend time with your receivers, getting to know them so you can build that timing. That way, when the shit really counts, you can be on your game.
I think they're going to come out to a fast start with the Jets. I really do. I think he's got the potential to have a very, very high upside season. Matt, you said 160 targets?
Yeah.
I think that's realistic because Rodgers is going to get the ball out to him, even if Rodgers misses a little bit of time. I think Zach Wilson's been infused with some confidence now, having his big brother, Aaron Rodgers, there, the guy he looked up to. And I think this is going to pay some benefits for his career long term. And I see Garrett Wilson killing it this season.
At 11, Jaylen Waddle. A lot of what I said about Tyreek Hill applies to him. He's got elite speed. He led the league in yards per reception last year. He had over 1,350 yards. He scored 8 touchdowns. He is a yak machine. That's what he does. They get him the ball in space while he's moving, and he does his thing. He is a big play receiver. Over half of his receptions last year went for over 20 yards. I know people are worried about Tua and if he gets hurt, but White Mike is going to sling it. It's not like you've got the shitty backup quarterback circus that they had going on last year in Miami. Mike White's going to come out. If he's on the field, he's going to throw the ball. This year, I think he's good for 84 grabs, around 1,400 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think he would be the wide receiver 1 on a lot of other teams, just the same way we say that about T. Higgins. He just happens to be paired with Tyreek Hill. But that does open up a lot for him.
I like him too, Matt.
Nice.
No, you're right. You're right, though. It's a similar situation to the Bengals where you have legitimately 2 number 1 receivers there, and it allows, in this case, Waddle to see the benefit of that because he's not seeing double teams as often. So it's a very similar scenario to T. Higgins. I like Waddle a lot. I would, depending on where I go in my draft, I would be okay with him being my wide receiver number 1.
Yeah, I think he's got a big season this year. I think the Dolphins are going to be hard to contain on offense, and I think he's going to be the beneficiary of a very high-scoring offense.
Number 12, Chris Olave from the Ohio State University and the New Orleans Saints.
Ohio State University. Matt, you love them, right?
I knew you guys would like
that's
that.
me.
Cute.
Last year, his rookie season, he played 15 games. He had 72 receptions and 1,042 yards. Only 4 touchdowns, though. I think with an improved quarterback situation and hopefully a healthier Michael Thomas, he's going to establish himself as the number 1 receiver. He already has. He's going to be the unquestioned number 1 receiver on that team. Derek Carr is going to get the ball to him, and they're going to be able to do some things offensively that's going to open Chris Olave up to catch some easy ones. So I predict he has around 85 catches for 1,200 yards. I think his touchdown rate goes up a little bit. I think he has 7 touchdowns. I know I talked about this with AJ Brown, and I'm not going to harp on this for everybody we talk about, but last year, his rookie year, he was the 6th most productive receiver on a per route basis with 2.42 yards per route receiving yards. So really productive receiver out of the gate. And I think he's going to continue that into his sophomore campaign.
You think there's any chance he watches a lot of pick sixes this year where he's like, chase him down?
Yeah, there's a chance of that. Yeah. But he's Carr's not as bad as Jameis with those. Jameis is a little bit feast or famine though in his defense. So I think consistently the ball's going to be there more often, but you do have a point that he could see some of those pick sixes.
I think I'll see Derek Carr's oh shit face a lot this season.
I'm not big on Carr either. At this point in his career, he's not somebody who's going to lead an elite explosive offense like he was when he was a little bit younger, when he had that one good season. With Olave, I'd rather have him as my wide receiver 2 than my wide receiver 1, just because I don't have a lot of faith in Carr. But if I had to have him as my wide receiver 1, then like, all right, I'll deal with it, but I'm not excited.
Well, on to the next one. Number 13, DeVonta Smith. As you were saying earlier, number 1 in snaps for the Eagles wide receivers. I think this is going to be a breakout campaign, and I think it might be the season he becomes the number 1 target for the Eagles. Not that AJ Brown is bad or anything, but I think if there's any chance he misses some time, I think DeVonta Smith steps up and really just takes those targets. Not full time away, because it's great to have those 2 receivers to spread the ball around to, but I see DeVonta Smith taking a little bit more of those targets this season.
Yeah, he was a tale of 2 seasons. He did most of his damage in the last 6 games of the year last year. He had half his yards, half his touchdowns, and his yard per catch was up like 5 yards. He did have, interestingly enough, 12 red zone targets, which was the same as CeeDee Lamb. And just when you think about the size and build disparity of those two, because DeVonta Smith is a small dude. It was really an interesting fact to find out.
Got a lot of heart, though.
Yeah, he does. He's got that dog in him.
He's got that dog. It's a French bulldog, but it's that dog.
Let's see. We got number 14, T. Higgins. 109 targets, 74 receptions for 1,029 yards. 7 touchdowns last year. Jeez. Ask yourself, he's a wide receiver too. You'd be a wide receiver 1 in your fantasy football, right? Easily.
He could be a wide receiver 1 on a lot of teams.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, for sure. He's 6'4", great in the red zone. Let's see, and he's in one of the best passing offenses, there. He's got Chase.
You talked about their balance too. That's going to help them as well. They're unstoppable.
Yep. Chase missed 4 games last year. Higgins averaged 6.5 catches, 93 yards, and half a touchdown per game. That was a full 17-yard season. That's legit wide receiver 1 fantasy stats. I like him for 140 targets, 95 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 8 touchdowns.
I think those are reasonable expectations for him. Yeah. Nothing too outlandish. I think there is even room for a little bit of growth there, just depending on how much time Chase misses, because, again, he's a dude who misses a few games every season.
He gets nicked up.
15th receiver off the board, DK Metcalf. He really had a Jekyll and Hyde season last year. He had his second 1,000-yard receiving season. He set career highs in targets and receptions. But he also set career lows in yards per reception, yards per target, and ADOT, with bringing in Geno Smith as opposed to, letting Russ cook. I don't know. I don't see much of a bounce back for him this season. I'm not a big Geno Smith guy. They brought in Jackson Smith-Njigba this year, which I think he's going to eat into DK's targets more than he would eat into Tyler Lockett's targets, because Lockett is primarily used as a deep threat. This year for DK, I'm looking at about 85 grabs for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, the Geno Smith experience usually worse the second time around. I think last year was impressive. It was a nice, Disney movie, so to speak, but I think the ending has happened in the Disney movie, and we're going to see reality this year. I think it's going to get ugly in Seattle.
Yeah, the sequel is a Michael Bay movie.
Yeah.
Lots of explosions. Featuring the 12th man.
Yeah, I think he's highly unlikely to get the target share needed to be a top 10 receiver in this league. I need a real quarterback.
Moving on to number 16, we have Calvin Ridley. This is a guy, he really hasn't played in 2 years. He played 5 games in 2021, but then he took some time off for mental health reasons. And then, as everybody knows, got suspended for gambling for the entirety of the 2022 season. So you're looking at a guy that in 2020 had 90 grabs for almost 1,400 yards and 9 touchdowns. Had a really good per catch average of 15.3. But he's in a completely new offense after not playing for 2 years. I find it puzzling that people are so high on him. He's a really good receiver, but again, not having seen him for 2 years, I don't know that I can justify taking him this high. I could be completely wrong, and him and Trevor Lawrence have a great relationship, and he goes back to the way he looked in 19 and 20. Also, thinking of when he was having those good years on the Falcons, he was the number 2 receiver, and he's going to be the number 1 on Jacksonville this year. So he is going to be the focal point of defenses. I'm curious to see how defenses, how he'll handle that, not having that security blanket of a Julio Jones or another receiver that's going to take some of that defensive pressure away. I look for him to have around 70 catches for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns. I think it's going to take some time getting back into the swing of things and building that relationship with Trevor Lawrence. I think there will be flashes where he'll have a game or two where you're like, oh my God, Calvin Ridley's back. But I could see him disappearing some games too, just because of that time off and the amount of weapons they have on Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence is going to have a lot of options to distribute the ball.
He is. And I think the big thing is there isn't a Hall of Fame wide receiver opposite him anymore. When he was asked to be the man, he turned in career lows in yards per reception, yards per target, and catch percentage, and he looked like he was not up to the task. Part of that might have been the mental health issues that he was suffering from, but I'm not going to spend this high of a pick to find out the answer to that when there's people like Christian Kirk, Evan Ingram, and Travis Etienne on the team who already have established roles and established target share.
All right. Well, number 17, Deebo Samuel. I got to tell you, I don't know what to expect out of this team because the quarterback situation is they always have injuries, but Kyle Shanahan, in him we trust. I think it's going to be a very high-powered offense, and I think Deebo Samuel will get a high percentage and really one of the motors powering that offense. A little more of a mystery how he's going to get his fantasy points. Will it be more with handoffs? I know he's wanting to be considered more of a wide receiver and stop running, but I think in the heat of the game, he's a competitor. They're going to offer him chances to carry the ball. He's going to take it, and I think he's going to have potentially 500 rushing yards this year and about 800 to 900 receiving yards. I do think that offense is just going to move the ball with McCaffrey and Kittle. If Purdy can come out at all and have any kind of rhythm and chemistry with the team, I expect Deebo Samuel, like I said, to be one of the engines really powering that team along with Kittle and McCaffrey.
See, I feel the opposite about them. I'm out on Deebo Samuel completely. He's never played a full season. He doesn't find the end zone. He's got 12 touchdowns in his 4-year career. With a full offseason to get Christian McCaffrey fully integrated into that offense, I don't think there's going to be as much rushing opportunity that's there for him. And I think Brock Purdy had a better relationship with both George Kittle and Brandon Aiyuk. Taking him at 34, 35 overall, that is a massive overpay, and I'm out on him completely. I won't entertain drafting him.
I would draft him a little later though.
I'm with you guys. Just to play a little bit of devil's advocate and kind of, I understand the intrigue with him because he is such a unique player, and you feel like there are those games where you're like, holy shit, did you see what Deebo had yesterday? He had 2 rushing touchdowns and he had another grab and he had 200 total yards, but then he disappears. And you see the highlight plays, and I think people get intoxicated a little bit, and that might be why he's so high on this list. Throwing back to Kyle's weekend being intoxicated. I'm with you guys. I consistently, he's not a guy that I would rely on to be even a wide receiver too. He's just a really unique player though. And he's a wonderful luxury item to have on an actual football team.
I think McCaffrey's going to miss a little bit of time. He tends to miss some time. And I think Deebo, like I said, it's going to be hard to predict how he gets his touches, but I think he'll find a way to the football. He always does. To the end zone, that's a different story. I think that the offense will be a lot more high scoring than they typically have.
Number 18, Jerry Jeudy, 100 targets last year, 67 receptions, 973 yards, 6 touchdowns, all career highs for him. He did miss 2 games last year. The Denver Broncos were a fucking eyesore last season. There were some bright spots, and Jeudy was one of them. I'd like a high ceiling for him with this improved offense with Sean Payton running the ship now. I got him a flex. Maybe he'll fringe the wide receiver 3. I still like him for 80 receptions. I think he's going to break his first 1,000-yard season. I think it's 7 touchdowns. Something stable, not flashy, not great. I just don't know what's going to happen there with Peyton and all the bullshit they got left over from the last regime.
I think that one of the best things you can do for your coaching career is go in TV for a year or two, because people start to talk about what a genius you are. Yeah. Not that Sean Payton isn't a really good offensive mind, but this team was dog shit last year and it was a disaster. And I know he came out and had some comments talking about that and how it wasn't all on Russ or on the players. I just don't know if I can believe it until I see it. I think I need a year to see if Russ can still cook. I could see it being another struggle year. I just don't know. I don't like Russ Wilson.
I don't either.
He quit cooking and eating Subway. That's what he does now. He doesn't cook anymore.
Very creepily.
Number 19, Keenan Allen of the Chargers. He is Justin Herbert's security blanket. When he's on the field, he's going to get peppered with targets. His problem staying on the field. And as we move along in this list, all of these players are going to have warts of various kinds. And a lot of times it's just the ability to stay on the field. Last season, he did have 66 grabs for a little over 750 yards and 4 touchdowns. Plays primarily out of the slot. This season, I think, if he can get to around 12 games, I think there's an opportunity there for him to sniff 1,000 yards, probably closer to 950, maybe 80 grabs and half a dozen touchdowns if he's lucky. I mean, but overall, especially in a PPR, you could do a hell of a lot worse, especially as you get now towards the 4th round. A lot of the bigger name receivers are gone and you're starting to look for some values. And I think he could present a value just depending on how many games played he has.
Yeah. I mean, on a per game basis last season, he was as good as he's ever been, really. He averaged what was he? 16.4 fantasy points per game was the second best mark since 2016. Well, he's not
feels
showing
like he's
much.
Played forever too.
I know. Yeah, he's just not.
I had to look at his age.
He's not showing signs of slowing down, except for some of the injuries he's dealing with. But he's also got a new OC this year, Quentin Johnson. They drafted that rookie. We'll see if he impacts his target share at all. I still expect him to get his.
I think Quentin Johnson will impact Mike Williams' target share more than he will Keenan Allen.
That's true.
Just because they're both kind of down the field receivers, and that's not Keenan Allen's game.
Yeah. Next up is number 20, Amari Cooper from the Cleveland Browns. Last year he played all 17 games. He had 78 receptions for 1,160 yards, 9 touchdowns. I look for him to have around those numbers again. I think he's going to probably not play all 17 games. That's really hard to do. But I think between Deshaun Watson having a year under his belt in that offense and playing the entire season this year, along with a full off season with Amari Cooper, I think that relationship is hopefully a little bit better. I think he's going to have around 75 catches for 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. Solid, but not spectacular.
Yeah, I think he's going to finish as a wide receiver 1 this year. He's proven both in Oakland and in Dallas that he can be that real alpha for an offense. This is his age 29 season, so he's still in his prime, but he's in the back end of his prime. Usually for a wide receiver, it runs until their age 30, age 31 season. Look, Deshaun Watson, the player, can drive elite production for a wide receiver. I think he'll have shaken off the rust from missing all the time due to his various misdeeds. And I think Amari Cooper has like 1,400 yard upside this year if he can stay on the field for 15 or 16 games.
Yeah, I think Amari Cooper and Deshaun Watson haven't had time to massage that relationship, but now they've had time to really oil it up, lube that thing, and get it going. And I think this year they're going to look up on social media, reach out to a friend, call them over to the hotel room, and finish the deal. I don't want to beat around the bush. I think they're going to do well this season.
That was very subtle.
Oh, thanks. That's my specialty.
It sounds like you guys think that this relationship's going to have a very happy ending by the time the season's over.
I danced around it. I'm glad you went there.
Yeah.
DeAndre Hopkins, speaking of age 31 seasons, coming off a suspension last year, traded to the Tennessee Titans, or not traded, but going to the Tennessee Titans to where he can go to die, where Julio Jones went, where Randy Moss went, and where old wide receivers go to die. This is not going to be a good season. I don't expect 1,000 yards. I don't expect 75 catches. I expect an injury-shortened season on a terrible team where he's overextending himself.
I'm not looking for much out of him.
Old too.
Yeah, I'm not looking for much out of him at all, really. He only played 9 games last season due to some various injuries, and he was suspended last year too
For steroids.
Yeah, so he's juicing, trying to extend the career. Right, no kidding. Tannehill's not somebody who's going to throw the ball deep down the field, which is good because that's not part of his game anymore. He's going to be working closer to the line of scrimmage. He has elite hands. The dude doesn't drop anything, and he's a son of a bitch on those contested catches. I just don't see this being a real elite offense. I think he'll end up somewhere around 800 yards, 900 if he's really lucky. Maybe he sniffs the end zone 7 or 8 times, but he's not going to have a huge catch volume. He's not going to put up big counting stats. He's somebody who, maybe I have him as a low end flex play, something like that.
I mean,
I don't.
He can maybe move some chains for you. I just think Tennessee would completely have to change their offense for him to be elite again.
I don't think
to be elite, he'd have to kick their field goals.
Yeah.
Not going to get in the end zone.
I don't think he's going to be as bad as Julio Jones was going there, but with Tannehill and the way that offense is structured, I'm really surprised that that's the team he decided to go to, having the pick of whoever he wanted to go to. Even the Patriots, I think, would have been a better option if he wanted to get more production, because Mac Jones at this point is probably a better passer than Ryan Tannehill, at least.
Hell yeah, he is.
But again, that offense isn't geared towards passing the ball a whole lot. They're going to run the hell out of Derrick Henry and play good defense and see where that takes them. But maybe he'll have some touchdowns, some clutch touchdowns when they need to have when they're coming back, something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to justify it, but it's really tough.
He's going to have a big Thursday night game in like a division rivalry against the Jags or something. And we'll be like, is DeAndre Hopkins back? And the answer will be no.
Oh.
Sell high.
Going to torch the Colts for 250 yards.
Yeah, somebody's going to draft him as their wide receiver too, and they're going to be disappointed.
Yeah, and they're going to be somebody who hasn't been paying attention for a couple of years.
Right. They're drafting based off reputation as opposed to what his actual production will be.
Someone I would draft as my wide receiver 2 is number 22, Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. Even with them being a super run-heavy team, I still like him for wide receiver 2 numbers. I'm going to put a hard ceiling on his totals this year. 130 targets, 90 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 6 touchdowns. that's just kind of I'm kind of just with the unknown of Desmond Ridder still. I just don't want to go any higher.
Yeah, I don't know how you could set up a quarterback for success better than what they've done there in Atlanta. They've got an elite offensive line. You have generational talent, supposedly at both running back and tight end. You've got somebody with a high pedigree like Drake London. It seems like if Ridder comes in and just doesn't shit on his shoes, those three players should be able to produce very respectable numbers. And I think there will even be some left on the bone for Tyler Algier.
I mean, yeah, there's no other receivers there.
Matt Collins is okay, but
yeah,
I mean, I'd rather have him as my wide receiver 3, speaking reality football, than as a starting receiver.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's just him and the running backs and Kyle Pitts. That's the offense. So we'll see.
It all hinges.
Kyle Pitts will create a lot of space this year to operate in.
It all hinges on Ridder. And I know, again, we're in that area where there's a lot of variables there, and you're kind of looking to try to kiss the prettiest pig at this point. But you're absolutely right, Matt, and even Kyle. If Desmond Ridder has a halfway decent season, Drake London could be a real sleeper pick.
My God, that's Taylor Heineke's music. All right, number 23 off the board, fitting for Chicago. It's DJ Moore. Last season with the pretty shitty Panthers, had 63 grabs, 888 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He did all right. He's been brought in to be the wide receiver 1 to aid in Justin Fields' growth. He had that 80-yard catch and run the other day in the preseason game, and
thing of beauty.
Right, and I'm sure he's rocketing up the ADP boards right now, but let's slow our roll. Let's let, Justin Fields grow a little bit. He needs to show that he can consistently target somebody like that and drive that production. I think this year Moore is going to be a bigger help to Fields than Fields is going to be to Moore, but I still think there's some opportunity there for him to, maybe 900 yards, 950 yards, 70 grabs, 75, maybe he scores half a dozen touchdowns. I think he's somebody who will have a solid floor, but he doesn't have too high of a ceiling just based on how that offense is set up right now and just where Justin Fields is in his development.
Yeah, can I go second here? I mean, I've been chomping at the bit with this. So
I know you've been waiting.
Talk about your boy.
DJ Moore, I think, he does not have a high ceiling. I agree with you. The offense is going to be more run based, even though Fields, I think, will have a higher completion percentage, more touchdowns this year. The offense is still going to be based around his ability to run and the team's ability to run the football and have some lower scoring games where they're trying to win and control the outcome. I don't think he has a high ceiling. I do think he breaks 1,000 yards, maybe gets double-digit touchdowns, because I do think he's going to be a really good red zone target. I think that they'll get creative with the way they get him the ball, and I think he's a really good yards after catch type of guy. But I agree. I don't think he's going to get the aid from Justin Fields that he is providing in return. As much as I love Justin Fields, I think that relationship will pay more dividends in the future if they can get it off the ground this season.
Yeah, and he's not a huge dude. He's 5'11", but he's thick at 210 pounds. And he was 4th in the NFL in deep targets last year. So, he does have the ability to take the top off the defense. And I like just how he's also consistently on the field. He's played all 17 games the past 2 seasons.
Is that thick with 2 C's, Matt?
Yes,
3.
it is.
Yeah, perfect. 3. Ooh, nice.
For a receiver, he is thick. For tight end, 2 C's maybe.
And if Moore and Fields can develop that chemistry early, I mean, he could be a high-end wide receiver too. Could happen. That you got in the 5th round. How are you looking?
I would love to have him as a wide receiver too, because I do think he's going to have a lot of targets and a lot of catches, even if the yardage and touchdowns aren't there.
Yeah,
I think there's going to be a level of week-to-week inconsistency too. I think he's going to have, 4 or 5 big games, 4 or 5 kind of, all right. And then there's going to be a few like, shit, I probably should have sat him this week.
Well, I think they'll have some games where the Bears defense plays pretty well. Fields runs the ball effectively, and they just don't have to pass. It doesn't even necessarily mean a bad thing for the Bears. But that's a good thing for DJ Moore if you want to win. And that's why he's in Chicago, is to try and contribute to a winning culture. So I think there's a lot of weeks, to your point, even if the Bears do well, he may not.
All right. Staying within the division, number 24 is Christian Watson of the Green Bay Packers. I started the research on him not being very high on him, but the more I read, the more I started to really like him. And I think he could be a value pick. The thing that scares me and scares everybody is the quarterback that's throwing to him. Last year with Aaron Rodgers, he played in 14 games. He battled knee and hamstring injuries up until about week 10. He had 41 receptions for 611 yards and 7 touchdowns. He actually led rookie receivers in touchdowns, but got them all between weeks 10 and 14. Really starting in week 10 is when he started to take off. In the last 8 games of the season, he was really good. He led all rookies in usage rate from week 10 on. And he was 4th in yards after catch with 6.4. So he was actually 1st in contested catch rate with at least 10 attempts. He had 75%. So he can catch the ball in traffic. I feel like he's going to be a guy, I hate to say this, but those injuries last year, those nagging injuries might be a harbinger of things to come. He may be kind of off and on the field. And if he can consistently stay on the field and Jordan Love can show any kind of ability at quarterback, I think he's a good value pick. But again, the question is, can Jordan Love consistently target him, or is he going to be sailing balls out of bounds over Christian Watson's head?
Oh, Lord, please do that. That would be great.
Yes, I would be fine with that. FTP.
Yeah.
I'd rather take Christian Kirk ahead of Christian Watson.
I think you'll have a sad season in fantasy if you take Christian Watson.
Yeah.
Agreed.
He had some spectacular plays, guys. A beast. 6'4" and fast as shit, but
he would be
not
really
this year.
intriguing if Rodgers were still there, or if he had a proven quarterback that we're throwing to him, because I think he does have a lot of talent. He's a young guy, obviously, but I just don't think I can pull the trigger unless he's there at just some obscene point in the draft.
And coming up at number 25, scary Terry McLaurin. And the only thing scarier is a QB situation there. I came up with an acronym. Didn't you say FTP? What's that stand for again?
Fuck the Packers.
Just wanted to hear it. Fuck the Packers indeed. So I've got another one for you. Shit. It's Sam Howell is trash. And I think they're going to be terrible this year. I think Scary Terry actually probably still has the same year regardless, because he's had horrible quarterbacks the entire time he's been there. I'm expecting him to go with about 1,100 yards, 80 catches, and maybe 5 to 6 touchdowns. That's about it. But I do think he's going to be a pretty consistent receiver. Again, like we said, everybody at this point, you can talk yourself into taking them and you can talk yourself into not taking them. But I think if you take Scary Terry, you've got a pretty consistent low end wide receiver too, or flex.
Yeah, Scary Terry is awesome. Like you said, he's super consistent, 3 straight years over 1,000 yards. He doesn't score too many touchdowns, but he does stay on the field, played all 17 games the past 2 seasons. And last year, he was number 5 in the NFL at route participation, 98.9%. When that dude is active, he is on the field all the damn time. And that equals opportunity.
I've got an acronym for you guys, FTR. He screams future Titans receiver to me. I think he's a guy that you're going to go back and say, man, if he would have had a decent quarterback, I wonder what kind of numbers he would have put up.
And then he'll somehow put up 2 seasons with Tannehill of exactly the same thing. 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 77 catches.
Yeah. A 42-year-old Ryan Tannehill.
He'll be one of those guys that sticks around. You're like, how in the hell is he still playing?
Yeah.
And the Raiders, they took him? No. Or the Colts, sorry.
Yeah.
I mean, he's somebody good to plug into your lineup, though, as that low-end wide receiver 2, a high-end wide receiver 3, or if you only start 2 receivers, he would be an elite flex play. I'd have no problem taking him here and plugging him in every week. He's a set it and forget it player.
Number 26 off the board, Christian Kirk, the Jacksonville Jaguars. They gave him the chance to be the number 1 there last year, and I didn't think he wasted it. He had 84 receptions, 1,108 yards, and 8 touchdowns. I think he'll lead them in targets again on the team. I like him as a high-end wide receiver too, even with with Ridley there, I'm going to step it back a little bit. 120 targets, 80 receptions. I'll go right at 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns, a little bit less than last year. But for PPR, I might even put. Like I said, I think I like it better than Christian Watson. A few guys.
Yeah,
I take him over Christian Watson.
He's a guy that I think is going to benefit if Calvin Ridley starts off really slow. I think he's a fantastic safety net for if Calvin Ridley doesn't work out. Did I say Calvin Johnson before?
No, you said Ridley.
Okay, good. They had Calvin Johnson, man, they'd be really good.
Yeah.
But no, he's solid. I think he's fine if he's there in this area, or maybe even a little bit higher. I think if things really go off the rails with Ridley, you could see Kirk having a pretty good year.
All right, let's talk about Mike Williams. He's the 27th player off the board. He's another guy who misses quite a bit of time, but I think he is going to benefit from the new OC there. With the Chargers, they've got Kellen Moore. He come over from the Cowboys. Lombardi is gone. And over the past couple seasons, that offense had really gotten stale. I think they're going to open things up, send him downfield some more. Brandon Staley really shit the bed playing him in the last game of the season last year, where he got hurt and missed the playoff game. He is elite when it comes to contested catches. He's got good size. He's got good speed. This year, I'm looking for him to have around 100 targets, 70 grabs, 1,085 yards, and we'll call it 6 touchdowns.
I was just going to say he really showed a lot coming down the stretch last year, and it was just really puzzling why he played in that meaningless game. It really cost them. I feel like he's got a lot of potential coming into this year, depending on Keenan Allen's health and some other things. But I like him at this spot. I even maybe like him a little bit higher than this.
Yeah, I think he's got some touchdown potential this year on the high side, and that could really swing his season a little bit better. I would say I'd take him a little higher than this. I do think with Justin Herbert and the red zone, he's going to find him. He's a big body and a big target. I expect potentially 8 to 9 touchdowns out of him.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he's got 1,000-yard upside. He's got double-digit touchdown upside. He's just never put them together in the same season.
We've got Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 28. He played 15 games last year, and it feels like he only played like 9 or 10. And he's one of those guys that screams future Titans wide receiver as well in 2 or 3 years when he's past his prime. He had a decent season. He had 104 catches, 1,023 yards, but he only had 3 touchdowns, and that was playing with Tom Brady. So the quarterback situation is drastically different in Tampa Bay. And for that reason, I think I'd stay away from him. I mean, somebody's got to catch the ball between him and Mike Williams, who we'll touch on here in a little bit. I think he's good for about 75 catches, 750 yards, and 3 or 4 touchdowns, but that offense is going to struggle. So, he does miss games. He misses on average 3 or 4 games a year. So I'd count on that as well. If he's there as a flex pick, I guess, okay. But any Bucks receiver or skill player, you're going to really have to talk me into drafting any of them.
Yeah, for me, I'm not opposed to taking either him, or Mike Evans. If I'm going to take one, I want whichever one is cheaper. And that's just going to depend on how that individual draft falls. I imagine Baker Mayfield's going to be the starter, and I just can't imagine him pushing the ball down the field to Mike Evans. I think if he's going to pepper one of the two with targets, it's going to be Chris Godwin working closer to the line of scrimmage, something that's a little bit better suited for Baker Mayfield's very limited game.
And Baker's shown an ability to get upset with his receivers if they try to show him up or have a little bit of anger, which Mike Evans has shown that. I think Godwin has more upside because of that, realistically, the chemistry with the limited quarterback.
I think he's going to get peppered with targets. Chris Godwin's probably the only fantasy option.
But will they be at his feet or over his head?
It's possible.
That's true. That's true.
All targets are not equal. Brandon Aiyuk is up next at 29th. I think he's going to benefit. We were talking about Deebo Samuel earlier. I think he'll have more targets than Deebo Samuel and probably have a better overall season from a receiving yardage standpoint, not from an overall fantasy production standpoint, though. I expect him to have 1,100 yards, probably about 75 catches, a little less than last season, a few less targets, but I think his touchdown number at 8 last year is going to go up just because I really do expect that offense to score more with McCaffrey. It's going to be really tough for defenses to game plan against them. You have a guy like Brandon Aiyuk can really kind of slip through the cracks and have some really big games in an unexpected way with Samuel and Kittle and McCaffrey there. I think he's got some high upside potential and a great pick this late in the draft.
I love Brandon Aiyuk. He is my breakout pick. I think he's going to finish as a top 10 wide receiver this season. I can envision a scenario where the 49ers call on George Kittle to stay in and block more than they have in the years past. I think at this point, everybody knows how I feel about Brock Purdy. I don't think he's anything special. He's Kenny Pickett of the West. But Brandon Aiyuk is third in the NFL in target separation per catch. Granted, for this breakout to happen, I think Deebo needs to miss a quarter of the season, 4 or 5 games. I think that's going to happen. I'm going to bank on it. 100 catches, 1,350 yards, 10 touchdowns is what I view for him this year. I think he's a beast, and he's going to put his foot down and say, I am the number one target here in this offense.
He's on his 4th year of his rookie deal. He hasn't got anything else yet, so showing for that to try and get a big deal.
Yeah, the 29th receiver. What?
Yeah. It's
value.
I mean, yep. Yeah. I would definitely draft him a little sooner. It must be a lot. Is it the worry you think of? There's so many mouths to feed, and
I think it's
if Purdy wins the job, I like him a little bit more than Trey Lance. If he won the job, then I figure there'll be more run heavy with Lance.
I think it's the amount of weapons that they have, and I think it's the consistency piece that he needs to show. And I think, Matt, to your point, if Deebo ends up injured, I think he can show that a little bit more. Full disclosure, I'm kind of jaded because I had Brandon Aiyuk on my team last year. I played him when he didn't have any kind of production, and then I would sit him, and he'd get 3 touchdowns and 175 yards receiving. So I'm a little jaded, but I do like him at this spot if he's still there.
Number 30, Diontae Johnson. The Steelers had 117 targets, 72 receptions, 882 yards, and 0 touchdowns. This cannot fucking happen again this year. He had plenty of opportunities. His target share was 26.8%, 10th highest among receivers in the NFL. Like, he had more than enough opportunities, but didn't do dick with it. I like him as a bounce back candidate this year. I'll do 120 targets, 85 receptions, 1,000 yards. He's going to get 6 touchdowns. He needs to make it up from last year. It's crazy.
Yeah. If you would have given him 6 touchdowns with the same receptions and receiving yards
he would have
had last
he'd been a top 20 finish.
Easily he would have been a wide receiver too. So you are going to see regression in his touchdown total. Not real big on Kenny Pickett. I'm actually a little bit higher on George Pickens than I am Diontae Johnson, especially where George Pickens is going. But I do think you're going to see some improvement with Diontae Johnson this season, especially when it comes to the touch. Like, 0 touchdowns just isn't going to happen again.
Right.
Pittsburgh's offense, I think they're going to struggle this year. I think it's a further down the ladder for him this year for Diontae Johnson. I think this is a guy you can actually have low upside and potentially downside even at this position.
And they're going to be the 4th best team in that division, right? I mean, probably
3rd or 4th, but
yeah,
I could see them being better than the Browns.
Okay.
Did you guys know Mike Tomlin's never had a losing season as a head coach?
Wait, what?
Next on the list at 31 is Tyler Lockett. Last year, 84 grabs, just over 1,000 yards, 9 touchdowns. Like we were talking earlier, he's been the deep threat in this offense for several years now. One thing that was very troubling year over year between last season and 2021, his average depth of target and yards per reception were down 4 yards with Geno Smith there. that's pretty rough. He's played in 16 games, 7 of the past 8 years. So he stays healthy. He stays on the field. He gets a pretty decent target share. Geno Smith, I'm not sold on. I know we've talked about that at length here. Last season was his career year, and it was a good season. Like, I'm not going to knock him. I think there is a cap on what he can do and what this offense can do, and I think last season was it. This season, I think, is going to be roughly the same as what he did last year. 80 grabs, 1,000 yards, 7 touchdowns, but they're not going to be sending him down the field and targeting him further downfield like they have in years past. I know he's getting a little bit older too, but I don't think he's really lost much.
Yeah. He's 4 years in a row with 1,000 yards, 5 years in a row with at least 8 touchdowns. It's crazy. I think he'll have fewer catches, but I think he'll see some more big plays.
I'm rooting for Seattle and Geno with my heart, but not my wallet. I just don't see them doing it again. I think Tyler Lockett, great talent, great deep threat, but Geno's just, I don't see him doing it 2 years in a row at this point in his career. If he does, maybe he's the Rich Gannon of this generation, but we shall see.
And coming up at number 32 is Mike Evans, the other half of that craptastic. No, not crap. That's a little extreme. The Tampa Bay Bucks receiving core. It's not really the receiver's fault. It's just the quarterback situation. We already talked about it when we talked about Godwin, so I'm not going to continue on. I don't really have a lot to say about Mike Evans. Between the two, I mean, he's a big body, but he doesn't really catch a lot of possession balls. He's more of a deep threat. And Matt, I think you're the one that mentioned it. If Baker's the quarterback, he's not going to be chucking it down the field. We saw how that went with Odell Beckham Jr.
It'll be hard for him to even be a name inflated flex, in my fucking opinion. I
think he's going to be on the bench for a lot of teams this year.
Yeah, I would agree. I think there is some opportunity for some touchdowns when the team gets in the red zone, just due to his size. But even throughout his career being a deep threat, he's been a catch it and fall down guy. You know, he averages like 2 yards after the catch per reception, which, like, all right, cool. And just given the limitations that they're going to have at quarterback, like I said, if I'm picking one, I'll take the cheaper of the two. Chances are it's going to be Mike Evans. He's somebody I'm plugging in as a low end flex or maybe a second flex player, just depending on the league. He's not getting anywhere near my wide receiver positions unless it's a bye week.
Well, up next is Michael Pittman out of Indianapolis, the 33rd wide receiver. I think with Anthony Richardson, they've established a little bit of chemistry here, and I'm kind of excited about what they can do. I was looking at one of his local interviews, and it was kind of funny. He was saying he thinks Anthony Richardson is faster than him. He's like, don't tell him I said that, though. They're like, he's going to see this on the broadcast. He's like, well, never mind. I'm faster than him. And they just kind of seem to have almost like a sibling relationship, but a very solid brotherly kind of relationship where they're challenging one another to be better. They hold each other accountable. And I really am expecting a pretty solid season out of him. My guess for his stats this year, I'm looking for over 100 receptions, about 1,100 yards, and I think he'll find the end zone 7 times. I think that it's going to be a run-heavy offense potentially, but I think Pittman, this is a steal at this position in the draft because he has some serious upside if things turn right. Ramey, I see you smiling, but am I making your day here?
Well, you are, but even as a Colts fan, I don't know if I can agree with that. I think there are going to be games where Pittman and Richardson really show a lot of rapport, and I think there are going to be some really nice games. But I think there's going to be some games where Richardson struggles, and they do focus on the run, and Pittman kind of goes missing. That combined with the fact that I don't think he's a true number one receiver in an NFL offense, he's not really shown me what you need to show. And granted, the quarterback situation has been trash over the last 4 years, but he just hasn't established himself as that difference maker. So I would love to see everything that you described. I'm really trying not to get my hopes up on this Colts team. I think that they're going to show flashes, but I think they're going to be wildly inconsistent.
Yeah, Justin, you are out of your damn mind. I don't give two shits about their chemistry. Anthony Richardson, I imagine, is going to average about 150 passing yards per game. Over the course of the season, that's a little over 2,500 of those yards. I think Pittman will get a decent share of that. And he does have his upsides. He was first in snap share at 97.1% and route participation 100%. So he's on the field. He doesn't present much touchdown upside. I'm thinking like 70 for 704 touchdowns out of him this year. I think he's nothing more than a bye week fill-in. And if somebody's taking him as the 33rd wide receiver off the board, you can have his ass.
Number 34 off the board, George Pickens. Just talked about Diontae Johnson. He didn't produce big numbers last season. That wasn't really his fault, though. I mean, the quarterback situation was abysmal. The offense struggled a bunch. But they added some pieces to the O-line. The running game should be solid again. Can Kenny Pickett take the next step and get the ball into their playmakers' hands? If I'm tempted, I'm kind of fading him a little bit, because if Pittsburgh's offense sucks again, I'm looking at you, Matt Canada. They're just going to go back to their old ways of running the ball, playing defense, and hoping they're in it at the end.
Terrible talent, terrible offense.
Yep. So I like him as a solid flex option. Sometimes he can creep in the wide receiver 3, but it's gonna stay in that offense. It really is. I'll have him 115 targets, 70 receptions, 900 yards, and 5 touchdowns.
I think he's better in a standard league than a PPR league, because he's going to be their big play receiver. They're going to look to get him the ball downfield, those jump balls, contested catches. So I think there is some touchdown upside there. I know they like to look to Pat Freiermuth in that area of the field, and they've got Najee Harris, who's going to run the ball. But on those corner fades there at the goal line, that's where the ball is going to go, is to George Pickens. I think your estimate is pretty damn close. I think he'll be a little bit closer to 1,000 yards, but he'll just miss it. And I think there's a good chance at 8 or 9 touchdowns. 35th wide receiver off the board, Marquise Hollywood Brown. Last season, 67 grabs, little over 700 yards, 3 touchdowns. He played 12 games. He's never played a full season. He does have 99th percentile speed. He runs a 4.340. So that is something that can be taken advantage of. A lot of his season is going to depend on how much time Kyler Murray misses, because they've got Colt McCoy and rookie Clayton Tune until Murray gets back. This is a situation where somebody's got to catch the ball. If I draft,
could be the other team.
If I draft Hollywood Brown, it's not like I'm looking to my buddies to dap it up and celebrate. I'm taking Hollywood Brown because I've attacked other positions earlier in the draft, like tight end. I've got my quarterback. I've got several running backs, and now, all right, because of that, maybe I'm chasing at wide receiver a bit. I'm not expecting a whole lot out of him. I think, roughly what he did last season is what you should expect this year. Maybe a little bit more if he plays closer to 14 games than 12. I don't think he'll be 1,000-yard receiver. He's not going to be a double-digit touchdown guy. He's going to be better in a standard league than a PPR league, because he's going to be that downfield threat because of that elite speed.
I wouldn't touch him with the 10-foot pole.
Nope. Depending on the way the season shakes out, I think you've got some injury opportunities certain weeks for him, but man, I've been burned by that guy so many times. You talk about having one good week on your bench and then a terrible week in your lineup, and that whole seesaw. I don't like that roller coaster ride. No, thank you.
I would actually take the next receiver off the board probably before Marquise Brown or Jackson Smith-Njigba, a rookie coming into Seattle out of Ohio State. Was hurt most of the year last year. He hurt his hamstring against Notre Dame in the 3rd game of the season, so his numbers weren't anything really to write home about. But his 2021 season, he had 1,606 yards, 95 receptions, 9 touchdowns, including 347 yards in the Rose Bowl with 3 touchdowns against Utah. So racked up a lot of stats there. I think he's perfect for this offense. If Geno continues to be somewhat of a producer like he was last year, he's going to fit into the slot seamlessly with Lockett and DK Metcalf on the outside. we talked about it before. He's probably going to steal some receptions from DK. I think he's going to have a really good rookie year, and I think it's going to be one of those where you pick him up early and you maybe don't start him right out of the gate, but mid-season on, you could look at him and say, wow, he's really producing. So if you can afford to stash him on your bench for a few games while he gets used to the NFL game, I think he's going to be a guy at the end of the year where you say, wow, he's an offensive rookie of the year candidate. Geno had 101 passer rating on passes from 8 to 10 yards, and that's exactly where he's going to be. He's going to be catching out of the slot on those slants and those cross routes. So Geno's extremely accurate and extremely productive on those types of passes, and that's where he's going to fit in really well. So I'm high on him. Maybe it's because I did the research on him and he's one of the guys on my list, but I think he's going to be a guy that as the season goes on, you're looking at him and saying, wow, I could really see him plugging him into a flex play.
Have at it, buddy. I don't see it this season. I just don't, because in order for him to have the kind of season that people are expecting, that has to come hand in hand with gains from Geno Smith, and I just don't see it happening.
I don't know if it has to be gains from Geno Smith. I think he's going to impact the production of Lockett and Metcalf. I don't think he's going to light the world on fire by any means, but I think he's an option to. Oh, that was one I used to hit on quite a bit too. So mark that one up. I think he's going to be a good option as the season goes on. I'm going to stick to my guns. We can write that one down and we'll revisit it in December.
Offensive rookie of the year. It just keeps bouncing around in my head. I think a lot has to go right for that to happen. You've almost got me believing what you're selling here and buying it because you seem so hyped on it. And I did a little research on this or on him as well. And I think he has a chance to take a lot of DK Metcalf's work and potentially find a lane for himself. But man, a lot of that's predicated on Seattle having a repeat of last season. And like I said earlier, I wouldn't bet on that.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not down on him because of his talent. I think he is an elite talent. He put up those numbers at Ohio State, sharing the field with Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave.
Exactly. Took the words right out of my mouth. That's what he was actually better than Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave in 2021 at Ohio State. He had a better yards after catch. He had a better yards per route run, targets per route run. He was the best receiver on that offense in 2021. He just had to stay another year. So he probably could have really benefited from coming out a year earlier than what he did. That's all I've got to say about that.
Also piss on Ohio State.
I was going to say you're complimenting a Buckeye. What?
It wasn't a compliment. It was just a statement of fact.
Okay. That's fair.
All right. Want to get into our sleepers?
Yes.
My sleeper this year is Sky Moore. I think he's got a chance with Kansas City this year in his second season to really have a big season. I'm predicting like 1,000 yards, right at 1,000 yards, but I think he's going to be maybe 1,500 total yards. I think they're going to use him in some creative ways in that offense. I think with Bieniemy gone, we're going to see some nifty trick plays there. We're going to see some kind of cool things in Kansas City. I think Patrick Mahomes is looking to pretty much say it doesn't matter who my receivers are. As long as I've got Travis Kelce at tight end, I can make some shit happen elsewhere. And I think Sky Moore is going to be a big beneficiary of that. I think Kadarius Toney has just too bad of an off season. He's kind of in his own head, in his own way a lot of the times in the field. And I think Sky Moore is going to come out and have a big season and shock a lot of people.
I would say Kadarius Toney is a guy who can't stay on the field. When he's on the field, he's an elite talent. They've also got Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who can't catch a damn cold. So it's wide open for, who's going to be the second one to eat there behind Kelce.
Well, I think he's going to take that Super Bowl success into this season.
I drafted Sky Moore in my Dynasty League last season. Just kept him on the taxi squad the whole season, but he starts lighting up this year. I won't bring him back. I won't bring him up. He's been getting a lot of work as the number one slot guy there at training camp. So,
and the sky's the limit.
I
had to. I'm sorry.
It sure is. All right. My sleeper is Juju Smith-Schuster, the Patriots, formerly with the Chiefs. We were just talking about 78 receptions for 933 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I see more opportunity for touchdowns here in New England. Smith-Schuster, he's a big slot man. So was Jacoby Myers, who just left in free agency. Myers had 6.9 targets per game and a 22.6 average target share when active. I just see Juju Smith just kind of slotting right into Jacoby Myers, position. I like wide receiver 3 flex, definitely in PPR formats. I'll say 117 targets, 80 receptions for 900 yards and 8 touchdowns. Nothing.
Subscribe.
I like the signing for the Patriots. I think he could mature a little bit, and under Belichick and in that culture and that system and the program over there usually do. I think he's got a potential to have a solid season. Pretty good sleeper there. Good upside potential and some great matchups.
Yeah, he's such a zone beater and working in the short and intermediate areas. And he's a big slot. I think of the smaller slot that have played it with New England over the years that have just ate. And unfortunately, they had a much better quarterback throwing to them than Mac Jones. No offense to your jersey there, Mr. Matt.
My jersey is offended.
Yeah. But like I said, I'd like to see, he should get more touchdowns there. Like again, flex wide receiver 3. Take him
I think
PPR.
they might use him kind of like Aaron Hernandez, not to bring up a terrible name, but they used him more in the slot and like a big slot in that way when they had the 2 tight end format, and I could see that happening there.
My sleeper is Romeo Doubs of the Packers. We talked about Christian Watson earlier having his best success when Doubs was gone. He's shown to have some pretty good chemistry with Jordan Love this preseason. I think he's going to be that possession receiver on the outside. He's going to be Love's security blanket. He's going to be a better play in PPR than he would be in standard, but I could see him pushing 900 yards off something like 85 receptions.
That's best case, right?
I would say that's 25-30% chance of that happening.
I do like
Jordan.
him.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
I like him, especially if Watson gets hurt again, and I think he will. I think he'll get. Yeah. He's a guy that's going to get dinged up. But again, with that quarterback situation, I need to see Jordan Love for a few games before I'd be willing to pull the trigger on that.
Well, I think they're going to use Watson down the field, whereas Doubs is going to be closer to the line. Sure. He's going to be a quick read on a lot of stuff too. So
yeah, it doesn't matter. Watson, Doubs, they have that nice rookie tight end there too. Musgrave.
Oh, Musgrave. Reed's looked good this year too.
Yeah,
or this preseason.
Like you guys said before, it depends on the accuracy of Jordan Love and see what he can actually do in charge of the team.
I think there's going to be a lot of back foot passes, skipping in the dirt.
I'm fine with that.
I think he's going to. Dobbs has a chance to have a pretty solid season, even if the Packers aren't good, because I think they're going to be in some garbage time games where they're just throwing to come back, and you've got some upside potential there. But in terms of just Jordan Love's consistency, we haven't seen it, and the Packers have struck gold 2 quarterbacks in a row. The odds are not in their favor, so Romeo must die.
My sleeper is Jordan Addison from the Vikings. I think he's going to have a breakout year.
Love it.
That one's great.
The offensive talent there with Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson is going to allow Jordan Addison to be open, or at least have single coverage most of the time. And he's shown that he can get open. At Pitt in 2021, he had 100 grabs for almost 1,600 yards with Kenny Pickett there. 17 touchdowns. He was the Biletnikoff winner. Last year, he transferred to USC with Caleb Williams. Not as productive as a year, but he arguably had more talent around him. So he had 59 grabs for 875 yards and 8 touchdowns. I look for him in that offense to have around 60 catches for 800 yards and 5 touchdowns, which would be a really good rookie campaign. And I think just the fact that they're not going to be paying a lot of attention to him because of the other talent. He's going to have tons of opportunities.
Yeah, he's replacing Adam Thielen this year, and Adams, let's face it, he's getting old, and Jordan Addison's way more athletic than Adam Thielen. He's going to be able to do way more things. I like that pick. Sweet pick.
I think that's got some offensive rookie of the year potential there.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. I think his floor is what Adam Thielen did last year. I think he's got a 1,200 yard ceiling on him this season.
Wow. I don't know if I'm that optimistic.
Yeah.
Do you think potentially 1,000?
I just think with the yards that Jefferson's going to command and Hawkinson there from the tight end spot, I don't think there's going to be that many opportunities for him, but I'd love to see it. I think that offense is going to be dynamic because of just the balance that they have. And Cousins is just a reliable quarterback back there. He's not going to do anything to blow
Light
your
the world
mind
on
or
fire.
anything. Yeah, that's what I was.
But that's what he was going to say. And he's
I
like,
stopped
wait a minute. Wait a
Don't
minute.
do it. I shut down a little bit. He's not going to blow your mind with anything crazier, but he's a consistent quarterback. He's accurate and he can put the ball in the spot. And I think that's exactly what a rookie wide receiver needs.
Yeah, Thielen had 107 targets last year. I don't think 125 targets is unreasonable for Addison this year. Holy shit, we made it through the list.
You did yours, Matt?
Yeah.
Oh,
Remember
who's
we
your
had the
sleeper?
whole-
Oh, Dubs.
me-
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
Yeah. Sweet. Wow. Justin, thank you for fucking joining us again. We love it. Maybe I don't know. I'd like to have on before. Maybe you can get on before the baby's born in October, but I understand that month is going to be busy as shit for you regardless. So, but we'd love to have you on again whenever you're ready.
Well, let me know. I'd love to come back on, and once the season gets kicked off, talk about how DJ Moore's the number one wide receiver in fantasy. Justin Fields is the number one quarterback in fantasy, and the Bears defense is just trashing everybody. From my lips to God's ears. Thank you, gentlemen.
One of you guys want to introduce the pick sixer? Who wants to
matter.
take a stab at
I'll
saying
do
it
it.
correctly this week?
I want to redeem myself from last week.
Nice.
Pick sixer.
You do it, buddy.
Yeah. All right. Now it's time for our pick sixer. This week we are talking about our favorite. Did we decide favorite TV characters or best TV characters? I guess it's all
Favorite.
subjective, so it doesn't really matter, right?
Yeah, exactly. Want to redo it or
No,
keep going? Oh, okay, cool.
I felt like it was okay.
Yeah, it's good.
Just conversation.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear your six.
So I guess I'll start. I'm not going to get into depth into these too deeply, just because I know we went pretty good with the wide receiver stuff. But my six, we'll just get into it and see what you guys think. So number six, Fraser Crane from Cheers, and probably the most successful spinoff of all time, Frasier. Didn't really watch it until I was a loser in my 20s and staying up until 4 a.m. and Frasier's on from like 2 to 4 a.m. on the Hallmark channel, and I got into it watching it then. It's a pretty funny show. Just the longevity of that career, of that character, is the reason why I put him on this list. And I think they're actually coming back with a second spinoff here in the next year or so. I think it's going to be on one of the streaming services. So my number five is probably going to be on your guys' list, Tony Soprano, the head character of one of the best crime mob dramas of all time. Not one of the best. Really interesting character, seeing behind the scenes where it's kind of that duality of being the mob boss, but also being a dad, a father, same thing, dad, a husband, and having issues that many of us face in day-to-day life as far as stresses and things like that. So let you guys talk about that more when you get to it. This next one you might also have, I'm not sure, but it's actually a character and a real person. My next one is Larry David from Curb Your Enthusiasm. While not entirely based off his actual life, I feel like he takes a lot from his personal life and puts it into the show as far as his idiosyncrasies and just being able to bluntly tell the truth to people, even if it offends them or not. I wish I had a little bit more of that in me. Maybe not quite to the point he does, but really, really great character. My number three is Homer Simpson. One of the greatest TV dads of all time, even though he's a cartoon. Been around since I was a kid. I can remember my parents not letting us watch The Simpsons, and to think that they're still on to this day is pretty amazing. So Homer Simpson's my next one.
Also a spinoff from the Tracy Ullman show.
That's right. That's absolutely right. Yep. My number two is Walter White from Breaking Bad. I actually don't know if he should be on this list because I really debated going between Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. I feel like Jesse Pinkman's a really interesting character from that. While he gets a lot of credit, he doesn't get the top billing like Bryan Cranston does. It was a great character. I mean, just we've talked about it on prior podcasts when we talked about our favorite TV shows, so I won't get into it too deep, but just a wonderful character. Really showed, again, two different sides of life, being a high school chemistry teacher turning into kind of a drug kingpin. So great character development on the show Breaking Bad. And my number one, Michael Scott from The Office. Just everybody's nightmare of a boss. You can see things in previous bosses in him. I'm sure all of us can, where, oh my God, that kind of reminds me of so-and-so that I worked for back in the day. So Michael Scott is my number one from The Office. Which one of you fellas wants to go next? Or do you have any questions?
No love for Michael Scarn?
That's like Inception, like a character within a character.
When you mentioned that you watched Frasier, when you were a loser in your 20s, how does the loserness, has it stayed with you in your 30s, or did you shed some of it? Or
for sure, but I was forced to be more responsible just because of life. Because I like having things like, electricity and a roof over my head. So
right. And
sometimes
food.
Food's
you have
good. Sometimes you have to make sacrifices, and staying up until 4 a.m. every night was one of those.
Yeah.
I'm not ashamed to admit I watched Frasier and I enjoyed it. I checked it out late teens, early 20s. The comedy in it was too intellectual for me at the time, and there was a lot of shit I didn't get. But having watched it again in my late 30s, I appreciate it better. It's a damn funny show.
Yeah.
It is. I don't know. I'll just jump up to the plate. No particular order here. Omar Little, played by Michael K. Williams on the show The Wire. It was actually based on a true character there in the Baltimore crime world. It was kind of like this Rob Street level. Dealers, legendary for hiding or wearing a trench coat, shotgun underneath, and whistling farmer in the dell and stalking targets. Just a very interesting character I loved.
Rest in peace.
Yeah, that's right. The late Michael K. Williams. Next one is Barney Stinson, played by NPH, Neil Patrick Harris, on How I Met Your Mother. Just love the character. I like the show too, but I mean, he pretty much made that show. Much of that show's success for sure. Had a lot of catchphrases. One was legend, wait for it, dairy. It sounds stupid now that I say it here in front of you, but next. Let's go with Saul Goodman / Jimmy McGill, played by Bob Odenkirk on either Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. Albuquerque-based lawyer, and it's kind of like a consigliere for the aforementioned Walter White and Jesse Pinkman. And then the prequel storyline there for the spinoff Better Call Saul, also very good spinoff. Not longevity like, Cheers or Frasier, but and then you kind of see in Better Call Saul like his moral deterioration in the years before Breaking Bad. It's very interesting. Next, Al Swearingen. Matt, you got him on yours?
Swidgen.
Played by Ian McShane on the show Deadwood. And that was set in 1870s. He kind of ran the town there and the saloon, and his favorite phrase was cocksucker. What is he? I always remember how he says he describes life as one vile task after it. Good stuff. Next, Tony Soprano again. If you liked Goodfellas and Godfather and stuff, you probably liked Tony Soprano, even though he was a different kind of, mafia boss. You saw his deep flaws and mental and physical health take a toll on him, and so it's a little different. Number one, George Costanza. So, played by Jason Alexander on the show Seinfeld, my favorite. George Costanza is Larry David, so I guess I can't have Larry David, It's based on Larry David's life, but, short, bald, loser. He always fails to hold on to chicks and fucks it up, and it's great. He is, like you said, in your 20s when you're a loser, George Costanza's just always been a loser. That's
do
it.
you find yourself relating to any of these characters on that list?
Sure. Yeah, a little bit of all of them in a way. Matt, what you got?
I guess I'll hop up to the plate now.
Yeah, like a bunny rabbit.
At number 6 for me, as mentioned earlier, Omar Little from The Wire. Don't get me wrong, he was a bad guy, but in a few ways, he was a good guy too. Number 5 for me is Eric Cartman. I think he's the greatest animated character ever. And I think, as all of us have gone through our life, I'm sure we know a person or two that exemplifies a few of the traits that Cartman has. Number 4 for me is Al Bundy. His antics were always hilarious, and his rivalry with his neighbors. But when it really gets down to it, at the end of the day, he was a family man. Of all the opportunities he had to stray, he always came home. Number 3 for me is Don Draper from Mad Men. We've talked about character growth throughout a series. He's somebody who really grew as a very, very complex character. In Mad Men is one of my favorite shows of all time. Number 2 for me, Ricky LaFleur from Trailer Park Boys. That is my favorite comedy TV show of all time. Just an unforgettable character. The way he finds a way to screw up even the simplest of tasks. And number 1 for me, Tony Soprano. He was mentioned here earlier. Just he was the boss, but again, speaking to the duality of it, and it really brought mental health to the forefront at a time when there was a really big stigma around seeking mental health treatment.
Absolutely. Good list. Al Bundy was one I considered, actually. Still to this day, whether I'm at work or just talking about like different groups that could be formed, I still think of No Ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
Granted, that character would never fly today, but
No, it would not.
No, probably not. He'd get canceled for sure. Huh.
Or
he'd have to take his Biggins magazine and go home.
Biggins. Nice.
That wraps up our pick sixer. Be sure to comment. Let us know if you agree, disagree. If you have a list of your own, please share it. We'd love to hear about it. Really, really interesting list from all three of us. So looking forward to hearing what you all have to think.
And have to say.
Here we go. August 22nd, 2007. The Texas Rangers rout the Baltimore Orioles 30-3, their most runs scored by a team in modern MLB history. Texas was actually scoreless for the first 3 innings of this game. And then in the 4th, that's when the fireworks came. They had 6 runs there. The 6th, they had 2 grand slams and another 2-run homer for a 10-run inning. Texas added 6 more runs in the 9th for good measure, and the Rangers went 18 for 25 with runners in scoring position. Just beat the pants out of it. It was the first game of a doubleheader.
Can you imagine having to come back out for the second game of that doubleheader?
Yeah, like you just feel like if you were the Orioles, you just.
Is it? Or is it, well, we can't do any worse than game 1?
That's
right.
True.
I'd rather get blown out than lose a close game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Matt, what's your back in the day play?
August 21st, 1976, Operation Paul Bunyan begins in retaliation for the Korean axe murder incident. 3 days prior, 2 U.S. Army officers were killed in the Korean DMZ trying to cut down a poplar tree. In retaliation, 110 troops, 27 helicopters, and 3 B-52 bombers were dispatched to aid and support and finish cutting down that poplar tree. I'd say that's a proportionate response.
Yeah, I think so.
Wow. Good stuff. It's no bombing run, but
no, it's not.
Good stuff.
Or 26 bombing runs.
Right.
Consecutive.
In a row.
Yeah. Well, my back in the day replay is from August 20th, 1920. Representatives of 4 professional football clubs met in the first of 2 meetings in Canton, Ohio. The meetings led to the founding of the American Professional Football Association. 2 years later, the APFA officially became the National Football League.
Nice.
Yeah. Football. I'm ready. It's been great having preseason games on.
I've watched 1 quarter so far.
This was just our last weekend without college football.
That's true.
College football starts next weekend.
Week
For those
0,
that couldn't
which
do the math.
Week 0, which I think is the dumbest term for college football or anything really. It's week 1.
Right. I agree.
Well, that wraps up our back in the day replay. Let us know what you think. Thanks for watching.
Awesome. All right. That's going to do it for this week's episode. Big thanks to Justin for hopping on and talking some wide receivers with us. Really looking forward to the upcoming season, just a couple of weeks away. Also, our listener league is full. All 12 teams are taken. I am looking forward to beating the shit out of the other 11 teams this year and assuming my rightful place on the throne of the league.
Never going to happen.
No.
Well, you're in denial. Your
Kyle
time
and,
will come.
Kyle and I have already agreed we're going to collude if you start to get too
Oh,
far ahead
yeah.
of anybody.
Oh, yeah.
I smell collusion.
You won't be able to prove a fucking thing.
I hold commissioner powers.
Nice.
Ramey trades Travis Kelce to Kyle for
A blowjob.
$1. He's more expensive than one blowjob. He's the best tight end. Fuck.
I'm not that cheap either.
How many would you give for him, Kyle?
Anyway, thanks for watching, folks.
Don't
What
forget
else?
to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.
Thanks, Rocky's Pizza. Bye.